A guy who's combined innovation and creativity to create new business models for the future. He's a chairman and CEO of Shapiro Raj, a top 10 independent research and insights company. He's also the founder and CEO of Zain Raj, which is an ideas incubator. And most recently, he was CEO of Epsilon Agency Services, EAS, the largest global CRM and digital agency. But ladies and gentlemen, the one that will really interest and has brought in a lot of you into this room is that he is the author of a bestseller, Brand Rituals, How Successful Brands Bond with Customers for Life. That's an Amazon marketing and sales bestseller. It provides a new approach to building. And pretty much today's topic that he is going to talk to us about is how to market for tomorrow, not yesterday. Please put your hands together to welcome visionary leader, business futurist, business accelerator, Zain Raj, onto the stage, please.
Over 20 years of speaking, that there are 3 dead spots for any speaker, right? So either you're very good and they want you there because you can fill it, or you're so bad that they don't want to expose you to the largest group of people, right? So the worst one is on a Friday morning right after the awards dinner, right? Because everybody's hungover, okay? The second worst one is the first keynote session on the first day of any conference, right? Sandeep, right? And then the third one is what I'm doing right now. So whoever survived to make it here, welcome. I think hopefully you'll all walk away with at least some perspectives and some insights that address what I have heard over the past couple of days, right? It's always fascinating for me when I go into conferences around the whole world of direct marketing, which has become digital marketing, which has become technology marketing, which has become data marketing, whatever, right? At a fundamental level, we're all very, very excited about what this world looks like today, right? And we are also focused on tomorrow that we really, really find it difficult to understand how to approach. What I'm going to share today is a sneak preview on my next book, which is going to be out in the fall this year. And, I'm using this. Actually, it's the first time I'm exposing this in public. And I'm doing that because I owe Watsal. I couldn't make it last year when he invited me. So when he asked me to come this year, I said, OK, fine, I'll bring some content that might actually be new and interesting. If you guys like it, you can buy my current book. It's on Amazon, OK? And then you can buy the next one, OK? And I'll make sure I price it specially if you give me your cards for you. Make sense? So how many of you are ready for tomorrow? How many? Come on. All right. 5 out of everybody, right? Well, the reason why tomorrow looks very, very interesting and very, very exciting for people here, and a lot of technology people here, is because the subject that's been going on for the last 7 years everywhere, whether it's in the consumer market, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in academia, as I was talking about, everybody's talking about this whole idea called data and big data, right? So from Harvard Business Review that talks about getting control of big data to The Economist that talks about the data deluge, right? Everybody's got hopes and dreams about big data, right? How many of you think big data is a hype? 1. How many of you think big data is reality? Almost everybody else. How many of you think we're using any material part of this big data? Nobody. Good, because you're all right, right? Because we are living today, we have about 3 zettabytes of data already collected. And 97% of those 3 zettabytes, anybody know what a zettabyte is? I didn't until about a year ago. Because I don't think they kind of put those many numbers together. But, if you look at what's happening today, and if you look at all of the stuff that we're doing, and this is already kind of, old, right? I was talking to Kaushal, who's got that machine outside. And in that, they talk about how many WhatsApp and how many, text messages are going on. But if you look at what we're generating right now, it is going to get to, in the next 5 years, we will have over 40 zettabytes, which means we're going to have 40 trillion gigabytes worth of data available, okay? So things are kind of going crazy. And if we think it's crazy, don't be overwhelmed, because this kind of crazy has been happening for millennia. So 540 years ago, or 540 million years ago, and it was, lasted for about 30 million years, the Earth went through a period called the Cambrian period. Anybody here who, kind of gets it, right? That was the period in time that the world saw the most intense amount of growth, right? Prior to the Cambrian period, we had unicell organisms, very simple. The Cambrian period, over about 40 million years, created what people like us, people with a backbone, right, with vertebrae. And if it wasn't for that, but that was a period that had the highest amount of innovation, the highest amount of growth, and the greatest amount of extinction. Okay? I submit that we are today in the Cambrian period. Ask me why. Anybody? Why? Well, if you look at the US, which is where I'm based, yesterday there were 3,647,212 companies that offered to do analytics for big data with revenues of less than $15 million. I don't know how many there are in India, but do you think there's a market for 3+ million companies to be doing analytics for big data? I submit not. It's like what happened in the dot-com boom, right, in the early to mid-90s and stuff like that, and I know I was there. I was just joking with somebody outside that I remember doing the first 2 display ads on Yahoo, and then we realized, okay, we got the display ads, but what happens? So we had to call the Yahoo guy and go, what happens when I click on this? And he goes, they go to a website. And we go, what is a website? And I remember we were launching a new product, and we built a website, 1 page, in COBOL, C++, right? It was fascinating for a finance and an accounting guy and a creative guy from the world of advertising. Actually trying to write software was never the fun part. But we've been living through a Cambrian era, and that Cambrian era is going to continue to intensify, right? Data is becoming bigger and bigger. By the year 2020, people estimate that over 40+ zettabytes of data will exist. We will need data centers that will need 16,000 square acres of land. As somebody defined it, that's like driving all the way from Tokyo to LA, right, and around. That's the amount of space we'll need for data centers. The irony is, even by 2020, with the technology that's available, only about less than 1% of that data will be analyzable, right? So big data is great. Yesterday, I was in a panel with Kaushal, right, and I asked people a question. I said, anybody here who's over 50 years old? In the entire room, nobody, right? First time in my life I've been the oldest guy in a room, okay? I don't feel that old, but I was. And if you've lived through 30 years and you've been involved in building the Tesco Club Card program, and then the Harris program, which are the big data guys at that point in time, you've lived with a version of big data, right? The version of big data that nobody's lived through is this unstructured data that we all think is going to generate a lot of money and stuff like that. Well, it really doesn't. So if you look at it, what Jeff Hazlett said, Jeff used to be the chief marketing officer of Kodak, and at a conference we were speaking at, we were talking about the development, and this was before big data, a little bit before, but we were seeing the signs of it, and he talked about this and said, this shit is scary. For a guy who was one of the top CMOs and stuff, it was unintentional. But, as Jeff said, this shit is scary. So scary that he actually quit the marketing job because he stopped trying to live one step at a time. I've written about this, that in the world that we grew up in, if you think about from the 60s onwards, right, you had 2 kinds of marketeers, right? You had what I call the madmen, brand marketeers, right? The whole advertising is great. I'm going to make you believe something. I'm going to create attitudes that you will love. You will love my brand. You'll be aware. You will have interest. You get desire. And then around 1984, and I think the inflection point was the commercial by Steve Jobs and Lee Clow, right? Everybody know the Apple commercial? That suddenly made computing available, and that therefore made data available. We got into that, and I think Jeff was the first guy who actually created the framework of how to use data. In those days, that data he was getting was unstructured, but how to use it to make it easy. In Mumbai, and then at part of Trikaya, which became Gray, in Mumbai and Delhi at that point in 1984. So I remember the world I was in, right? I remember the only way we communicated with our Bombay office was via telex, right, with the code words. How many of you even know what a telex is, right? Well, you and me. Okay, the 3 old guys in the room, right? Okay, 4 old guys. But think about it, right? We used to have telex. I launched the first Super Mario game with Xbox, the Nintendo thing. right? I launched the first server for HCL, the first fax machine, right? It was fascinating in those days. It felt as overwhelming as it did here. But if you think about the rules of these economies, right, I've framed them as this. 60s to mid-80s was what I call the attention economy, where you had a marketing model which was, prospects, right? You were trying to launch new brands, new products, new innovations, and so everybody was a prospect, right? Mass advertising, the brief was build awareness, build interest, build desire, build trial, right? Then, that was driven by the whole evolutionary impact, right? You had Colgate and Crest, right? ADA approved, non-ADA approved, yada, yada, yada. Material innovations, good innovations that made our lives better, right? That was when we started getting the good braking systems, power locks in cars. Where's the gentleman from Volvo, right? Volvo became established as the safest car in the world, right? And so you had very, very important moves that were happening. But if you looked at the largest marketplace which was the US in those days, it was about the suburbia and new customer growth, right? And as you look at that, positioning became a big driver, right? Al Rees, Jack Trout, positioning, the battle for your mind in the 70s. And the brand was what we built. We built the brand because we believe if we can just make people aware of our brand and give them something to be interested in, they will drive it. I remember launching our first TV commercial on Doordarshan out of the Trikaya Gray thing. And I remember at the intermission, which you used to get, Sunday evenings, the old people will, right? You got 45 minutes, and then we used to have people stand in the stores to know if our advertising worked or not. Because people would actually go to the store and shop. That was our research at that point in time. That was the attention economy. Information economy evolved it. Huge amount of data starting to come, relatively, right? The consumer became first because it was the consuming, was about desire and action, right? Direct marketing, CRM marketing, loyalty marketing, incremental impact of consumer proposition stayed as a value. I can give you better value as a brand, right? Versus I position my brand for a difference. And the business metrics started to gain ground, right? Which is why analytics has become a driver towards all of that, right? And two, anybody have an idea? No. Okay. The problem they're trying to solve is what CEOs talk about in the latest IBM study, right? The world has gotten more and more complex when you talk. They talk to 1,534 CEOs around the world. And what do CEOs say? 8 out of 10 expect the business environment to continue to grow in complexity. Duh, right? They're dealing with global environments. They're dealing with geopolitical environments. They're dealing with commodity issues and stuff like that. One of my clients, as he's defined it, my bonus happens better when the gas prices go down and I lose my bonus. So he made a $10 million bonus, right? Because the gas prices went from $108 a barrel to $50 over the last 6 months, right? Destroyed the stock market in a way. But, that's a complexity, right? But less than half of them feel prepared to deal with it. So there's a gap. That's a complexity gap. And when you ask them, what is it that you need to solve it, they go, I want customer insight. Why is it? Because they've all managed to squeeze every penny that they've needed out of their supply chain, out of their operating model, and now the only place where they can get effect is by getting from customers, getting either more revenue or spend less to keep those customers going. And so guess who they hold responsible? The CMO, right? And what's happening with the CMO? We talked about Jeff, right? Most of the CMOs who grew up in the old world, they don't know how to deal with the data. They knew how to deal with research, but research has become one part of it, right? Is Vivek here? Because Vivek doesn't believe in research completely, so we'll have to grab him later. But you've researched, now you've got all of the behavioral transactional data, and then you have all of the social and the big data, right? How do I put it all together? I don't have the expertise, I don't have the time, because I'm dealing with so much stuff. How do I the same paradigm? I was in 2 panels over the last couple of days, and I keep on going. It's definitions, guys. But if you define things a certain way, you will answer it a certain way, right? Because it's easy. If you keep on digging the same hole, you're not going to get to a different place, right? And so that when Einstein said this, it's like, it's a great quote, and it kind of gets it. And so the way I frame it as a brand is not just about how I feel about you. I may love you. I think very highly of Coca-Cola. I don't drink pop, so I don't drink Coca-Cola. A brand is also always something that's an integration of a behavior with a relationship, okay? You have to have both. If you're not buying a product consistently, using consistently, you're not going to have it. I think Drayton said this well yesterday. You know, the strongest brands, and Bain Capital did a huge amount of global research, and they were able to prove strong brands have one thing different from weak brands: penetration. They have more customers than weaker brands. End of story, right? And then more customers are buying them and using them more often. That's the strongest brand. And so a brand is an integration of both beliefs as well as behaviors. And the traditional model of beliefs happens with some kind of marketeer, behavior happens, has become a problem, used to be a problem, and used to be the methodology issues. Research did one, analytics did another. And what has become a big, powerful opportunity if you're a marketer in the room, or if you're an agency person, or if you're a business person, is to recognize one real fact about people. What is it? When people say one thing to you, they actually don't mean that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. That is a reality in psychology. It's a reality in human behavior, where behaviors do not align with attitudes in a majority of the cases. Obviously, in categories where there's a lot of stress and insecurities, it is even worse. But even in categories which is as easy as, hey, you know, alcohol. You ask any consumer in the category and say, how much do you drink? Oh, it's a drink or two a week. Occasionally, maybe 1 or 2 drinks a week. Yeah, right, okay? That's what it is. So that dissonance between attitudes and behaviors is a big challenge for marketeers. And that, unless we can understand that, every discussion that I heard about technology is the savior never happens. Big data is great, never happens, because what data gives us is the ability to understand behavior, so we can connect it with the attitudes and find a way to reconcile the difference. Anybody know what happens to a turtle when it goes on turns over on its shell? Huh? Exactly. Because the turtle has no ability to flip itself back unless it gets some help. And that's the same exact thing that Einstein was saying in a very, very easy way. You've got to think about the problem differently from the way you created it. And the same thing with the turtle. Once you get on your thing, you better find another way to kickstart it and get out of it and go. And so I think that's where there is a point of view that I would like to express. That we move from the attention economy to the information economy. I submit that we are moving and we are on the way into what I call the insight economy. Welcome to it. Okay? It's a different world and a different framework with different rules to win. Because with all the data, with all of the information, with all of the complexity, there is a need for anybody to make any decision to simplify. Starting with your consumers, to your business partners, and the way to think about the insight economy is the fact that the way you win is you solve your customers' dissonance, having real problems that cause dissonance, not with a marketing campaign, not with a promise that you can't deliver, right? You know, and that's where, when people talk about customer experiences, that's what it is, right? And you got to do it in a way that's meaningful and in a way that's very, very different and much better than any other options that they have. The brand can ever get to me. If I choose to find out anything, can find out anything I want to know today, thanks to Uncle Google, right? You know, it's fascinating. You know, we're talking, I think, you know, I linked in Virendra, right? Right? Virendra and I were on a panel together. He's an IT guy, tech guy who decided to stay back because he thought he'd learn something about marketing, which I think he will. And then you'll pay me, right, later, Virendra? No, but the reality is, right, the shift that's happening, unless you can change and prove to somebody that you do something better, you will never get the credibility, because who do consumers not believe? Right? Used car salesmen, CEOs, and then brands with their advertising, right? That's why they happen. So how do you solve this? 5 steps. 5 steps. Step number 1, big shift. Begin with your most valuable customers. Everybody knows the Pareto principle, right? 20% drive 80%. Profit, business, your starting point, your midpoint, and your end point. What are the mistakes most marketers in this country? Because you're not as developed in your emerging market with a lot of new customers possible, you have to do that, okay? But I would submit that if you start with your most valuable customers and use them to find and convert the most attractive prospects. So in a simple way, analytic way, it's called lookalike modeling, right? But conceptually. And what you will find is what drives your core customers and how you drive value from your core customers and what kind of innovations you create with your core customers will actually bring you better prospects, kind of just a concept. Nike. Nike's strategy over the last 5 years, and they've been showing double-digit growth since then, has been built around not trying to acquire new customers. Not only a US strategy, it's a global strategy. And so what are they doing? They're actually operating in the inside economy. How are they operating in the inside economy? They still make great profit. But what they have done from when they created Nike Plus, which was an app that actually allowed people who are into fitness, into activities, into athletics, into sports, giving them the ability to measure themselves, create social communities, and outperform. Just do it and do it better with a group of people. They've evolved that to wearables, right? The fuel bands and stuff like that, and they've continued to evolve it. Well, a month ago, they shut down the fuel band. They laid off everybody in the fuel band stuff. And why did they do that? Because they're smart. They realize that in the inside economy, they cannot be, that they have no clue how to do. I'm a shoemaking company, but I'm going to do technology, right? I'm going to extend it. They go, nope, let's get Tim Cook on the board of Nike, and then let's see if we can do a strategic partnership with Apple, where Apple's going to make all our wearables. And we'll give them the data, we'll allow our customers, and we'll give our customers the ability to actually have a great experience. 14% growth, right? And we all know the wearable business is going to grow, right? It grew 700% in the last 12 months, right? It's going to be a $25 billion business in the next 24 months, and it's going to go, right? We're all going to go, despite Google Glasses, right? It's still, the wearable business is in the future, and it's going to happen, and Nike has decided we know what to do. We'll still make what we know how to make. We're not going to mess around with it. We'll still control our customers, because our customers are what drives growth, not our prospects. They don't do anymore. They don't talk about the soles and how their soles are better than Reeboks or Pumas, right? They are focused on a lifestyle and enabling their customer the core values of the company that Nike has championed. Make sense? One of the most innovative brands, voted as Fast Company's as the top 10 innovative brands. So that was the first one. The second principle, you need a new approach. So for any marketers, we all heard of the awareness, interest, desire, and action. Trust, respect, and loyalty. Your customer is not your customer. Your customer is an important stakeholder and the most important stakeholder for the success of your business. Treat them the way you would treat your wives or your wives. Right? I mean, David Ogilvy said this in 1962. They expect brands to understand them and to treat them with respect and to have a partnership which is built on trust and exhibit loyalty. But you can't have a customer exhibit loyalty to you when you don't do it the other way. It has to be a two-way street. You don't build loyalty, right? Learn that on Tesco. You give them the facts, and you treat them respectfully. It's a two-way contract. A customer has to be the most important. It's got to be a two-way contract. You cannot expect loyalty from anybody unless you give loyalty in exchange, right? Same thing with trust. Same thing with respect. That's the new rules of this new economy. It's not about, hey, let's make them aware. Do I trust you to make a great product? Do I respect the fact that you will stand by your promises, that if it doesn't work, you'll return it, you'll take it back? And will you treat me well if I am an important customer? Amazon does this brilliantly. That's not an example I want to show. But Amazon, I buy 70% of all my stuff through Amazon. There are about 7 things I wanted to return, and they didn't let me return 3 or 4 because they go, you know what, it's not hassle. You have it, just keep it if you want. Gift it away to somebody else, right? But then they give me discounts on a lot of other stuff because of that. But more importantly, they've locked me in by treating me well because they've kind of showed me those things. The other brand, insurance. If you live in the US, you need insurance. I heard you need insurance here as well. But Allstate was one of the classic old 100-year-old companies on insurance. Getting beaten by Geicos and Progressives of the world, right? Because they're all price points. They tried to play on price because they were trying to attract customers like everybody tries to attract customers, right? My customer growth is important. We went in and did a strategic assignment and said, forget that. Why don't you just keep your existing customers and stop your churn rate from 23% and drop it? You know what we created was what we called so loyal to Allstate that they actually bought more financial services products like investment and other life insurance and other things that Allstate was never known for having. They added $1 billion of incremental revenue in the first 12 months after that, okay? But that can have a huge amount of impact, right? Or have a huge amount of value, and you will get a huge amount of impact. It's a very simple math, right? Okay? Let's talk about an example just to bring that to life. UPS, United Parcel Service. They kept on struggling like everybody else had a tough problem. You know what they did? They landed up creating a small, very simple program. In hindsight, it's like, duh. It's called My Choice program. As a customer, you can register for it. You can decide when you want your package during the day. So it's not like, do you want morning or evening? Within a 2-hour window. You can actually reroute the package while it's on its way if you want to, right? You can change everything. In a 9-month period, they signed up 3.3 million customers for this program. 3 million customers who gave them all the information about them, the business, and what they did, okay? They were able to refine the program based on that. And in the last 12-month period, there were 3.6 million people, I think that's right, 3.6 million people, and a $2.1 billion incremental impact on their margin, positive. You know how much it cost them to build that thing? Because they already have the technology infrastructure built up, right? Like Subhash was saying, infrastructure exists. All they had to build was a solution that just said, I will make your life a little bit easier, right? That's big, and it's got the connectivity of the brand. They know those customers. They're able to build new services and stuff like that. But for it to work, you also need to have a new mindset, right? Built to last, right? In the world that we all grew up in, the marketing world and business world, you built a product, you built it great, you took 5 years to build a product, right? I'm sorry, I forgot your name from Volvo, right? Sandeep? Sudeep, right? I mean, it takes 5 years to get a new car designed and out, right? You take that long amount of time. And it takes time to do that. But in a lot of cases, the things you need to do have to constantly keep on evolving. It's easier in certain categories than another. I'm going to use a marketing solution or thing, but it's one of my favorite stories that I've seen happen over the years, and I'm seeing it come to an end. How many of you know who this guy is? Anybody? You know him? Yeah, blender guy, Tom Dixon. Tom Dixon was the CEO and third-generation family guy in a company called Blendtec. It's a blender company, right? Their blenders historically, pre-2006 and stuff, were used at large restaurants or were sold at like discount stores like the Kmart's and stuff in the US, right? Well, he hired, now because it's a small company, they hired young marketing people. So, he was kind of blending a 2x4 piece of wood. So George looks at it, thinks about it, 3 days later comes back, buys a white coat and gets it, Tom Dixon, embroidered on it, gets 2 McDonald's value meals because he realized that Tom likes McDonald's value meals, and bought a $120 Sony video camera from a Best Buy and went in. And he shot a video of Tom Dixon, okay? And I'll just show you another video, which is a more recent one, and you'll get the idea if you haven't seen them. Volume. Okay, let's start it again. Do you have the volume?
Will it blend? That is the question. Are you having trouble deciding which new phone to get? Nah, neither are we. But we have 2 phones here, and some people are telling me they're having a hard time making up their mind. So I am going to help them out. Are we ready? Lumia 929? Nobody wants that. Here, the Galaxy Note 3. And over here, see Seems like this larger size doesn't want to come out. Ah, the iPhone 6 Plus. I think I'll press the Newton button. And over here, I think I'll press the Who's Copying Who button. Oh, phablet smoke. Ooh, don't breathe this. Where's the plus?
So, you know, it's fascinating, right? So this was an unknown company. They've grown, compounded 700%, right? When you could buy as blender, the same blender you could buy for $99.95 plus tax in 2007, now is available at Neiman Marcus for $495. Same blender, right? It's become a premium brand. 144. So when I talk about evolving, the two things he did, one, marketing, he would have people respond back. I remember this one story because I'm a golfer and not a very good one, so I could relate to this. There's a golfer who had a bad day at the golf course, sent him all of his balls, right? I hate golf, and he throws all the balls in and blends, right? I mean, so he did things which were business that's done unbelievably well. You know, he's not going to show up after about 3 months because private equity came in and they didn't even know this company existed. They bought the company for a multiple that you only see happen in Silicon Valley, right? Now they paid 46 times earnings for his company, and it's got a contract as non-executive chairman for 3 more years just so he can do these commercials because he's cuckoo enough and brought a perspective, right? But it's the evolution of responsive and stuff. And for people in the creative world, because I know the awards are tonight, right, where you keep on changing campaigns and you keep on changing positionings, this is one of those things that act just values as in sustainability, or I care about my community, or I care about my employees alone. Those are important, but those are table stakes. Any good company needs to have some of those. But it's the real true values that align with your customers, and it's got to be authentic, right? I mean, some of us lived through this whole concept of the greenwashing. Remember when sustainability was this big thing, the carbon footprint around the world, for like a year it became like big data, big fad, and then it just disappeared because nobody could figure out a way to monetize it or execute it. But authentic, high-integrity-oriented values is what builds rituals, right? Because what do people connect on? People don't connect on any of the rational stuff. They connect on the emotional stuff, right? People connect when my values match yours. And brands, at the end of the day, the decision still comes down to an emotional aspect, because the one thing we as consumers hate is taking out money from our pocket and giving it to anybody. Needs, states have not changed, because we haven't changed since the Cambrian Era, when we started getting up. So I'm going to give you guys a very quick 3-minute example of the toughest category to ever build a new model in. It's called energy, right? Now, in India, I mean, we get energy from wherever we do. We don't have too much choice. In the U.S., we have choice, right? Our largest state in the U.S. is the state of Texas, which is one of the first states to get deregulated. Deregulation means the guys who had regulatory power, 2 companies that sold for 100 years, suddenly found at least about 60 to 70 other competitors in the market, right? Everybody can sell energy, and everybody can sell it for cheap. TXU is 104 years old. it's become a little notorious. It got bought by KKR and TPG for $40 billion, okay, about 10 years ago, because it was the largest issue. We looked at it and said, as we look at the world shifting, at the fact that we have data, the fact that we should understand our customers better, right? We went in and talked to customers, but also looked at the behavior and the consumption behavior. And we went into the presentation with this promise, right? Our promise, which is what I call, is with TXU, we will help you use less of what we sell. If you're a marketer, you look at this. I remember the CFO was in the meeting when I presented the executive committee, and he goes, oh, I can see the campaign. I go, what do you mean? Because we weren't really an ad agency, but everybody sees any firm coming in, even a consulting firm. And I go, yeah, if I created campaigns that says, hey, stop using energy, and you will stop paying money, yeah, sure. I'd be a laughing stock, but that's not what we're trying to do, right? So guess how we solved the problem in the new inside economy, okay? What we did was we took the data of each individual household consumption, we connected it with data about the temperature, the weather out there, the cost of energy, and for each customer of TXU, we created their personal portal, which we call the My Energy Dashboard. And what we did was we created complete transparency. We showed them what they used. We showed them how they used it based on what weather conditions were. We gave them, by 15-minute increments, the whole idea on, what was the weather on that day, what kind of conditions were driving it. We created, through smart thermostats, the ability to find out where the consumption was happening. Was it appliances? Was it the pool? Was it, and how did you compare with households similar to yours in your neighborhood, okay? Then we also gave them the ability to say, if you are not in the right spot, you can absolutely look at these tips to find a way to connect the dots. And then we made it all available through mobility, right? Made it so that it would be convenient to them, that they could control their energy, but also manage the expenses at that point in time. What did we do? We took an opaque category where people didn't understand why they were paying. Because in Texas, when it gets to 110 degrees in the summer, sometime, you could pay $1,000 in energy cost, right, for that period of time. And those are huge swings, okay? And our marketing changed. So instead of us doing deals, we basically started doing control your thermostat from anywhere, right? It's also a thermostat. Our targeted programs became all about, hey, your neighbor just saved 34% in the last 6 months of what they spent in the prior 6 months. Would you like to get those kind of savings? And you look, oops, I paid the same. Yeah, sure. If you don't believe me, go ask your neighbor, right? Because he's given me permission to tell you. And that was, so we didn't do the marketing. We did all the strategy underneath that. But that worked towards driving huge amount of acquisition, huge amount of retention. Obviously, more importantly, what changed the financial model was instead of seeing the churn happen, where they couldn't predict it because it was all based on weather, if you had a hot July, you would have 50% churn because people bought it month by month. We were able to convert over 1 million customers to we said we'll give you 5% every month if you sign up with us non-cancelable for X period. So 5% for 1 year, 7 for 2 years, 10 for 3. They got predictability on the revenue. So think $100 million predictable cash flow. So they knew how they were going to pay their interest. Huge shift in a business. So it affects not only the consumer, but the business. So the perspective, the final thought on this is in the use and solving real problems, but you have to do it in a way that they want to spend more money with you and continue to do so. So you're not spending on acquisition, you're keeping it in there. So, just to recap the rules, very simple. Start with the customer, don't start with the prospect. What your customers are going to love, the innovations you create for your customers will bring you better prospects and better capabilities than anything else and more sustainable, more profitable. Forget awareness, interest, desire, action, or whatever else you grew up with. Trust, respect, loyalty. Your customer is your wife. Treat her the way you would treat your wife, okay? Think about disruptive impact. Think about solutions, not just product-based, but other ways to solve problems, which are low cost for you, but high value for them, so you can get the impact. Hyper-evolutions. Don't stay still. You got to constantly evolve. You got to be thinking ahead and finding new ways because it's all about as soon as you nail something down, it's shifted. As soon as you set an expectation for a consumer, that expectation has shifted. It doesn't matter whether it's you do it or somebody else does it. Create authentic values. Stand for what you truly believe in. Don't stand for what your agency tells you your positioning needs to be. Okay? Brands have a DNA. Brands have a core. Stay true to it. Volvo. Safety. Lost it for a while. Wanted to be in performance. Get back to safety because that's what Volvo is. And that's what Volvo is great at. Nobody can beat you at that. Right? And that's what. And think about it. It's not just a brand. It's not just a business. It's about the integration of those because a brand ain't nothing but a driver to the business. And a business ain't nothing but driving value for the equity and the emotional connectivity of the brand, okay? As Edward Deming said, it's not necessary to change. It's very easy to stay. Survival is not mandatory, right? In the Cambrian era, a lot of, things extinct. A lot of companies and a lot of brands have gone. We've seen it. I think in the Chicago market, I've seen 6 companies that were around for about 80 years prior to that go in the last 10 years, right? In the US, we see those brands come, live, die. And we're seeing them happen faster. It's not necessary. Happening everywhere. And if you want to kind of get to the bottom of the core, this was the book that came out a couple of years ago. The next book is the title of the speech called Marketing for Tomorrow, Not Yesterday. So, feel free to go to Amazon and get it. I think we've got a deal going on. And if you have any questions, I'm available, assuming we have time now, or I can be available outside later if you guys have any questions.